Yes, playing within the pentatonic box is awesome. So many things we can do with that. It sounds great. It sounds predictable sometimes. And today we are going to talk about some of those notes that you can target to make your improv sound a lot more focused and maybe a little more musical than it might be right now. Even though you're a good player, I'm not saying you're not. But anyways, that's coming up. Hi, David Wallimann here. Welcome to this channel, which is all about helping guitar players like you find your voice on the instrument, develop it to tell your own personal musical story. And today, we're going to talk about targeting the right note to get out of this automatic type of phrasing that we all have. I'm not saying that that's a bad thing to rely just on automatic phrasing, but it can tend to sound a little predictable because your improvs are really heavily directed by your comfort zones, by all the licks that you've learned before. And that can be okay, but sometimes, again, repetitive. And I'm talking about all those, automaticisms. All those things that are kind of recurring in your playing. Some of the things that I play that are recurring to me might sound fresh to you, but to me they're not, and vice versa. And that's what we're trying to get outside of, because I think if we can regain control over what our fingers are doing automatically, our music is going to be a lot more personal to who we are, and there's a new type of enjoyment of music that comes out of that. And it's going to start with thinking a little bit differently. Usually when we start getting into lead, we associate a chord progression with a single scale and a single scale position, and we just play that position. We might start with, boring ideas up and down the scale, and then sequences, all that kind of thing, and then we start phrasing, and we feel comfortable with that, and we feel a little bit more free than the regular up and down. But are we really free when we are limited to a single position? I don't think so. It sounds okay. It sounds kind of like this. I made a loop out of the backing track I was using here. It kind of sounds like this. Sounds okay, right? All those licks. Okay. But what happens here on the chord change, oftentimes we stay within that zone, and which is okay, again, nothing wrong with that, but there's another way, maybe a little more focused. By the way, a good way to test yourself to know if you are in that automatic comfort zone is to record yourself playing over a backing track, mute the backing track, and if you can't really hear what's going on in the chord progression without the chord progression, that means that your solos are probably really directed by comfort zones. If your solo could work over multiple chords, if you can't really have a sense of what's going on in the back without hearing what's in the back, that's a good sign. All right, let's get to the close-up and you'll know all about it. Grab your guitar, let's get started. The main skill you need in order to do this is the skill of visualization and concentration. We're going to concentrate and visualize something that is not yet happening on our fretboard. Let's listen to the backing track here. The first chord we have in it is an A minor 7. We're going to play that in that zone of the fretboard. I could have played in this zone, this one, it doesn't matter, but I chose that one. And within that zone, typically we're going to use the first position of the minor pentatonic scale. That's what we'll use. The next chord is a D minor 7. And that's really important. I need to play that chord in the same zone of the fretboard. That's going to help our visualization after that. Back to A minor 7. So it's really important to know when those chords are going to hit and what the next chord is. After that, we have a E minor 7. Back to D minor 7. Typical minor blues. And then A minor 7. And then we have the E7 sharp 9, also known as the Hendrix chord. And then the loop comes back. Typically, players are going to play with that first position of minor pentatonic scale, which is always going to work. A minor blues. No problem there. You can phrase all day long with that. It's going to sound fine, and even on the next chord. And I'm not saying stop doing that. Continue doing that. This is one of your main skills that you need to develop. But here's where it can be a little more interesting. If you can visualize what the next chord is going to be within that zone of the fretboard, try to land on one of the notes of that chord. You don't even need to know the actual intervals making that chord. You can just visualize it. But if you know the intervals of the chord, it's going to be even better. And that's what we're going to target here. So we are in the A minor 7 zone here, A minor pentatonic, no problem, A minor blues. You can even go outside of that zone. Use the second position. The fifth, it doesn't matter. You can play A minor pentatonic. But in your mind, as you're doing this, as you're enjoying what you're doing and phrasing, musically, you know that this is coming up, that D minor 7 here. And we're using the same zone of the fretboard that we're kind of playing in. If we're playing in another zone, we'd pick another D minor chord shape. But for this, we're going to stay in that zone, between frets 5 and 8. So the D minor 7 that we have here is this one right here. That's the shape. Okay? This chord shares notes with the A minor chord and the A minor pentatonic scale. The root is the same. The fifth is the same. The minor 7 is the same. So those might not be the best note choices. However, the minor third, which you have here in that chord shape, this note is not found in A minor pentatonic, which is we'll call it the mother scale that we're basing our improv in. So this note is outside. So when we play that, when the backing track is playing that D minor, try to aim for that note that is not necessarily in the minor pentatonic, because that's going to highlight the change. Any other notes are not going to highlight that change because they are also found in the minor pentatonic scale. But if we hit this one, even without the backing track, you have a sense of that's the new chord. Right now you don't really know. That's A minor pentatonic, A minor blues. But, okay. You kind of have a sense of that behind it. You can almost hear the chord progression without the chord progression. Okay, so that's the main principle. Let's take a look at some chord shapes that we can use within that chord progression. We're going to try to stick to this area of the fretboard right here. The first one is an A minor 7. We can use the bar chord that everybody knows. The next one is a D minor 7. We can use this shape, and that's where we got this note from. Okay, back to A minor 7. Then we have an E minor 7. People might be tempted to use this position, which is fine, but that's kind of outside of the zone. So we are going to use this position right there, where we fit that zone of the fretboard. And any of these notes would be a good target note. Back to D minor 7 and A minor 7. And then we have the E7 sharp 9, which is this one right here. I'm going to start playing using my A minor blues as my home base, and then I'm going to try to target one of those chord notes that we just covered. Okay, and let's see what happens. So most of my improv is going to be A minor blues. Here's my target. The rest can be A minor blues. That's A minor 7. Here's the E minor. D minor 7. A minor pentatonic. And here's that E7. Any of these notes doesn't have to be complex. You can actually visualize the whole chord and play the whole chord and play any of those notes. So that's what I'll do here. I'm going to visualize this. I'm just playing the chord here, but in a different note order. And so forth. Now, the next step, or not necessarily the next step, but an additional step you can take here, is to actually replace those chords with pentatonic scales. Major chords, major pentatonic, minor chords, minor pentatonic. You're pretty safe with that. It's most of the time going to work because you find with a typical minor 7 chord, a minor pentatonic scale, and within a typical major triad, a major pentatonic scale. If that's above, just trust me on this. So A minor, on that A minor chord, we can use A minor pentatonic, which is what we've been doing since the start. D minor, yes, we can continue with that D minor pentatonic scale, but we can also use a D minor pentatonic. See how that sounds. A minor, here's D minor pentatonic. And I can, if I want, use that minor pentatonic here. But I like to stay in the same zone. E minor pentatonic. D minor pentatonic. And back to A minor pentatonic. On that E7, I can use an E major pentatonic. Okay? All right. So that's kind of what I have for you. A great exercise to work on this is to actually imagine a chord progression. We can start with the blues. Imagine what you just heard here and try to highlight the changes without the backing track. Like I'm doing right now. What you're hearing right now is an A minor. Now you're kind of hearing this, right? Now back to that A minor. I'll try to highlight the E. The D. And back to A. So you kind of heard the chord progression. And you can even go further by imagining chords without planning them necessarily. So you're starting with an imaginary chord. I'll start with a G minor 7. And I'm trying to suggest that G minor 7 to you without actually playing the chord. And then I'm going to imagine, I'm going to visualize another chord. Maybe I'll visualize a C major 7. So you're hearing this now. And back to G minor. And just imagining the chord. You can actually grab a real book if you have a real book. Those are great ways to get into that kind of playing. But anyways, that's what I had for you today. Practice slowly, and it's going to do great things for your playing, I think. You can get the backing track we used here for free. All you need to do is visit the link below, enter your best email address, and I'll be sending you that right away. You're also going to be placed on my newsletter, the Guitar Playback newsletter, in which I send some valuable stuff free resources for guitar players, kind of like this channel, but a little bit further. Do it right now. It's going to do great things for your playing, I think. And if this was your first visit here on this channel, thank you so much for checking out this video. If you liked it, you should consider subscribing, because I have about 3 videos coming every single week, helping guitar players like you find your voice, develop it to tell your own musical story. Awesome stuff. Thanks so much for watching this. I'll see you in the next video.